Good morning and a happy Wednesday to you. I hope you're enjoying a productive week. My name is Mark Hausman, and I'm the President and CEO of Strategic Communications Group. We have expertise in an emerging area of the market commonly referred to as web to sales. This is how companies like yours align its web presence, content creation, social media, search engine optimization, digital communications, and CRM with tactical sales activities. We help marketers who sell to business and government customers more quickly identify and nurture sales-ready leads. It's an important question we help your sales team answer. Of the hundreds of prospects that could potentially call on this week, who has demonstrated a high level of interest in your company and its solutions? I'll be your host for this special online event entitled The Path to Nirvana, How to Build Measurable Marketing Programs in a Corporate Environment. Nirvana, that's an interesting word, right? For marketers, it often means putting in place a program that can be directly tracked to prospect opportunity in the sales pipeline and then a higher close rate to secure revenue. Yet, as we all know, it can be quite a challenge to reach this wonderful state of nirvana. That's why we are fortunate today to be joined by Erica Pearson, who is a colleague of mine at Strategic Communications Group. As you'll soon hear, Erica has invested the majority of her 20-year career designing, executing, and measuring the impact of marketing programs and campaigns, initially as a corporate marketer and now as a consultant. I know she's jazzed to share insight and best practices. More to come with Erica in just a moment. Before we get started, though, there are a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to quickly cover. First, our discussion today will run about 20 minutes, and we'll have time for Q&A. If you have a question, please enter it into the chat box in the right-hand column of your screen, and it will be sent directly to me. And second, in follow-up to today's event, we will send you by email a replay of the discussion. You'll also be able to download a replay in the Resource Center on Modern Marketing Today at www.modernmarketingtoday.com. This is an online magazine that reports on the trends, technologies, and best practices relevant for today's modern marketer. So let's now welcome in Erica and discuss how to build measurable marketing programs in a corporate environment. Erica, good morning. Tell us about your corporate marketing background. Where have you worked, and what responsibilities have you held?
Sure. Thanks for the nice introduction. As you mentioned, I've been in corporate marketing for about 20 years, and I've had a great mix of roles and companies, from startup organizations to mid-tier software companies to billion-dollar portfolio companies. And across all of those roles, I've had the opportunity to work in brand strategy. I did a global brand launch for Hobson's, a leading education software company, and that brand launch was across the U.S., EMEA, and our Asia-Pacific markets. I've worked in strategic marketing at Monster. I was there for several years and introduced a social media strategy there that enabled us to drive leads for the business. And also in product marketing. I actually started my career as a product manager at LexisNexis, went to business school, and ultimately got involved in product strategy and pricing, also at Monster.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like it's quite a diverse corporate marketing background. But now you're a consultant at Strategic Communications Group. Can you briefly share with us a little bit about what your job involves today and the types of clients that you work with?
Yep, sure. And actually, for those of you attending today, Mark and I have known each other for a long time, I think the better part of a decade. I worked with Strategic while I was at Monster, and we worked together to do something really innovative, which is how I ended up deciding to be a consultant at this point in my career, to get a little more of that innovation. What we did together at Monster was partnering to create the first B2B social media strategy for the company. And that was both kind of scary and exhilarating for me, and that's the kind of thing that I love as a marketer. So here at Strategic, I'm very new, but I've already had the opportunity to work with some great clients, kind of a mix of product and services companies. So I have some experience kind of sitting in their chairs, but I also have the opportunity to help inspire them to do some more innovative things and take some risks, which is exciting to me.
Awesome. So let's now dive into the heart of our topic here today, which is this path to nirvana, building measurable marketing programs in a corporate environment. What best practices, Erica, can you share with our audience that will help a marketer align their programs and tactics with really measurable sales outcomes?
It sounds like if that were, a chapter in an MBA textbook, you would think, why wouldn't marketing and sales always align? Isn't that how the world is supposed to work? But after years in corporate marketing, I can tell you that sometimes it really doesn't. And if you want to make it that work that way, and that's I think your key to success as a marketer, you really need to do three things. You need to understand what sales needs to achieve. You need to understand how to design a marketing program that is both measurable and adaptable, and you need to partner with sales every step of the way. So starting with what sales needs to achieve. The simple answer is, of course, sales wants to get sales. It's a revenue goal. Great, but when you dig into your trove of marketing skills and think about the segmentation work that maybe you've already done, or maybe you haven't done, the persona work and the buyer's journey work, as you dig into it and connect with sales and what it is they really want to achieve, you sort of realize that sometimes you're looking to attract new customers to a new product. Sometimes you can make a lot more money or a lot more profit, depending on what sales goals are, selling new products to existing customers. And sometimes you want to focus on a particular geography, and sometimes you want to focus on a particular product. Just to give some examples, often you can work with sales leaders either at very mature organizations or very immature organizations who really have a wide range of understanding of or goal setting for marketing. It's really important that you put that stake in the ground and decide what you want to work on together. Next, a marketing program that's both measurable and adaptable. I'll start with adaptable because I think it's so critical that people understand the difference between adapting for a business purpose versus being nimble because you don't really know where you're going. I worked at a large portfolio company, ICF International, and I worked with some executives from a startup that we had purchased. And the first thing their leader said to me, in a way that I think made sense to him was, hey, Erica, you and your team need to be really nimble while we figure things out. And what I would say to that is, yes and no. Because you want, as a marketer, you know that your messaging needs to be consistent even if your tactics change. So when I say adaptable, I mean you need to put together tactics that you know how to measure, like lead generation, like movement through the pipeline, like average deal size, things like that you can track and share with sales. And you need to be adaptable in terms of what those tactics are. So if you invest in a lot of events and are not working out for you, you need to be able to take that campaign plan, those positioning statements and those messages, and adapt them to other channels, perhaps more digital channels that might work better for you. And the third part, partnering with sales every step of the way. I think really as a marketer, if you're like me, you're really tempted to kind of put together this really exciting whiz-bang program and kind of just do it. And then at the end, kind of unveil this, voila, better results at the end. And what I'll tell you from personal experience is no matter how great those results are, if sales kind of, quote unquote, forgets what the initial goal was, or if they're not really ready for the leads on the day you share them, or they're distracted by other things, as sometimes happens to sales teams, they're not going to partner with you again, no matter how good your work was. So it's really critical that you stay in communication with sales and keep driving home. Remember, this is the goal of the program. This is how we've done. This is what worked. This is what didn't. And be really honest with your successes and also your failures. If something didn't work, that's fine. Fix it.
Yeah, I think in the past, Erica, you referred to that as kind of like the steer clear of the ta-da moment, where it's
yes.
like, hey, I've run this huge program, 6 weeks later, ta-da.
Exactly, and that sounds exciting, but people don't like it.
So, Erica, during your career as a corporate marketer, you've worked, as you've indicated here, you've worked in a variety of different environments, from larger organizations, often in a publicly traded environment, down to mid-tier, and then even some smaller, earlier stage companies. Does the phrase measurable marketing mean something different depending upon the size of the company where you work?
It's interesting. I get asked a lot of questions about my experience at small companies versus large companies, particularly by recruiters and headhunters, because people seem to latch onto it as if that's sort of a critical factor when evaluating a marketer. And what I would say is that marketing is marketing, and the act of measuring your marketing programs is critical no matter who you are and what you do, what level you're at or what size company you're at. So, for instance, I have examples from several different kinds of companies where I think the critical success factor, or the critical fail factor, if that's a term, is really all about executive focus and marketing's ability to develop programs around that focus. So to give a couple examples, I was at a small startup consulting firm, 10 people, $10 million in revenue. We ultimately were able to double that revenue by following a really simple strategy. And the thing is, for us, we just didn't get distracted by other things. So we focused on kind of a visual identity and positioning statements as our brand strategy. So we didn't pay a lot for brand promotion. We kept that really simple. We needed to start sort of a more systematized sales and business development practice. So we kind of got a methodology and a database set up, and we needed a new way to broaden our reach to customers, which in our particular industry, government contracting, involved getting ourselves on some new federal contract vehicles. 3 simple things that all business owners kind of know are important: being able to reach your customers, having a story to tell, and having a systematic approach to the market. But the mistake a lot of larger companies make is trying to do too many things, trying to insert a golf outing into that and having their one marketing person work on that and get distracted. So that's an example of something that worked really well. Another thing that worked really well, I was at a $100 million software company. This is Hobson's, and they were able to, well, they actually started with kind of a disorganized set of requests. We need some leads, and we have a messed up corporate website, and can you fix it? Let's redesign it. And so what my marketing team and I did, and sort of said, well, tell us more about the website. I mean, yes, it was kind of a bear. It was not the prettiest website you've ever seen, and it was disorganized. But really at its core, we were missing a brand strategy. So we worked together with the executives, and they were very open with us about what it is that they wanted for their business, and they were very clear. Yes, we want a new brand, we want it to include a new website, and here's the budget, and here's the timeline, and here's the team that you have to get it done. And I was able to drive that. I had a fabulous team, but I also had a goalpost that we were moving towards, and it was just very clear what we should be working on, and that was the critical success factor for us. Fast forward to a more recent experience at ICF International, a $1 billion global professional services firm. You would think at a much larger company would be much more capable of kind of developing not only measurements, but a lot more insights across the globe and across all of our practices. What I found when I got in there, though, is sometimes with a company that runs as a series of divisions with separate businesses and separate revenue goals, they kind of neglect sort of ways to pull all of those marketing efforts together, whether it's on the technical side, everyone entering their information into the same database in the same way so that you can effectively measure it, or in a more contextual way where people just really have different ways that they want to talk about themselves and talk about the company. So really, and we had a lot of challenges there because when you take a large budget and you put it into lots of tiny wedges, it's the same as working with a startup without the freedom. So ultimately, what I was able to do and sometimes you need to do this in marketing, is seek out other leaders and insight providers within the company. In our case, we worked very closely with the head of corporate strategy, who had a similar challenge when he was trying to talk to the investor community. How do we tell one story for this portfolio company? So we started there and were able to complete a strategy and set of positioning statements from that level, and that helped us push things down in a much more effective way.
So it's interesting when I raise the issue of measurable marketing, Erica, the answer is yes, it often means something different based on the size of the organization, because the size or the maturity of the organization, it is just going to be different business goals. And by, what you've honed in on is you got to align. I mean, again, it seems like marketing 101, but you got to align all those activities with the specific benchmarks or success metrics that the company has, and those are going to change based on where that company is in terms of its maturity. That's interesting.
Right.
You also referenced, so you've been very complimentary of the people that you've worked with, both at ICF, you've referenced Hobson's as well, that you've really been fortunate to have such strong teams. And, I was actually recently at an industry conference where there was a roundtable discussion with a group of corporate marketers, and they identified as their top priority, fascinating, like hands down top priority, was the need to identify, recruit, and retain exceptional talent for their team. So you've worked with some great teams, you've built these teams, you've motivated them. What experience have you had, like what best practices or insight can you share for our audience today about how they can go ahead and find and build and motivate a great team of marketers in a corporate environment?
I'll talk about this from a couple of perspectives. First, if you come into a corporate environment that's pretty established, so maybe you have a pretty large team, or maybe you have a team that has some empty recs that you need to fill. Either way, look at it and think, can these people do what I want to provide as a marketing leader? And even if you have highly competent, intelligent people, sometimes you need to think about augmenting that skill set. So I'll give you an example from ICF. We're very strong on content because we were a professional services company. We had so many internal SMEs, and we had some great, what I'll call programmatic managers who were able to pull things together very successfully, like webinars, like event speaking engagements, like Q&A sessions and blog posts and things like that. What we really lacked, however, again, we ended up back to this website discussion because that's where a lot of executive level conversations go because it's the piece of marketing they see and understand. It became clear that to them, and it was immediately clear to me and the rest of the team, that we needed a lot more digital expertise. And that's not just the ability to set up a Twitter account. It's not just the ability to write a paragraph to post on the website so that it's refreshed. It's deep understanding of SEO, understanding whether you want to do paid promotion, understanding of sort of a strategic editorial calendar that supports all of those digital tactics that you might use. So for us, we had to create a couple of different positions because we simply didn't have anyone on the team who knew how to do those things. A second sort of set of circumstances that some of these executives may face is kind of building from scratch. So when you are a startup company, you often hire kind of, to use generic terms, kind of a salesperson and someone to build your product, so an engineering person. And then, often they wait a couple, 2 or 3 years down the line and get some funding and say, well, finally we have money to spend on marketing. Who should we hire? And I think it's such a challenge for these companies because sometimes they don't understand until after they've already hired someone, oh, I don't think this is the way that we wanted to go. So again, it's about focus and goals. So executives will say things like, I just want some publicity. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean you want a traditional PR firm? Considering that's probably not how you're going to drive leads, probably not, but it sounds simple. And sometimes they'll say, well, I want someone who can support sales. And I say to that, if you treat marketing as a support organization, it will never drive the business for you. What I would say is think critically about what it is you need to achieve. Do you need kind of a solid identity for your company that you can consistently promote? You need someone with a brand strategy and communications background. Do you need to understand what should go into your product and what customers would really connect with? Then you really need more of a product marketing kind of person who can work closely with the engineering side. Do you need all of those things? Okay, then you probably need a slightly larger marketing team than a team of 1 or 2 because those skill sets are quite different. And you can also think critically about sort of a mix of internal and external resources.
So this is interesting. I mean, this is really what you're describing is very much a strategic marketing function, that the path to Nirvana, whether it is achieving sales outcomes, it is putting in place the team to deliver on those expectations, ultimately comes down to understanding the direction of the business and the priorities of its leadership, and then thinking strategically about how marketing aligns with that. So yeah, I mean, that's great stuff. So Erica, we've got only a few more minutes, and I've already gotten 2 questions in here, so I want to hit you up with these questions before we let you go. Okay, so I'm going to read this as they've come in. So the first is, it's a constant challenge to get my programs funded. I work for a mid-sized company, and there's just so much internal competition for resources. Does Erica have any tips for how I can better secure program funding? Got to find the money, right?
Yeah, well, you know, I think the number one thing that marketers need to do is stop asking permission and realize that you're in a role that is intended to drive the business. And your executives probably know how they want to drive that business. And if they don't, let's talk about it, and let's talk about setting some program goals that kind of get us there inch by inch. Because I think what a lot of marketers do is try to come up with a creative concept and pitch it internally, and the executives just can't get their heads around what the impact is. So what I would recommend is that when you think about what it is that you want to put together as a program, even if you know you need to distill it down to sort of a narrow scope of work, given sort of the resources that you have internally and externally, you really need to sit down with executives and understand and agree on the big picture. Where are we going? Are we positioning ourselves as a software firm? Are we trying to talk about ourselves as a solutions company? Great. Are we trying to grow in the US or the UK? Understood. Are we trying to promote sort of this set of services over this one? Is there something that's more profitable than the other that we should be promoting? Have those business conversations before you try to get into sort of lead gen and digital channels and sort of a lot of marketing details that's easy for you to understand, but maybe not so easy for someone else. Particularly in a startup environment, I would say treat things as kind of a proof of concept or a pilot program so that you can kind of start small, maybe with a quarterly plan, versus asking for a huge annual budget that kind of scares people a little because they don't really understand the impact.
Got it. All right, so second question for you. How do you share your successes internally with management? Erica mentioned this briefly. I'm curious, does she provide has she provided weekly reports on progress? Was it quarterly? Was it semi-annual review? Any thoughts on this?
I mean, it's interesting because I've kind of tried it all different ways. I've tried weekly reports.
That's what happens after 20 years, right?
I know. That's exactly what happens. And what I found is sort of sometimes you do weekly reports by emails, and sometimes, you know, people love to read those. Sometimes you get on a weekly call. Sometimes people never show up to your weekly call, so you think, why am I doing this? I think what's most critical, again, is getting the agreement for what information you're sharing versus the report itself. So I think the best example of that, and all of you as marketers have probably had this conversation at some point, you have a Google Analytics report, your internal client, whoever it is, whether it's an executive, a sales leader, or sort of a peer in one of the divisions that you're supporting, well, I want to see that. And then they see it and they don't really know what it means and they try to interpret it themselves. I think what's most critical in terms of reporting is offering insight. So even if someone says, I want to see that whole report, always leading, whether it's in an email or a conversation, with these are the top 3 things you should be able to glean from this, and here's some things that we as marketing are going to continue to do, and here's some things that we're going to change if you see some levers that need to be kind of shifted around. Because I think really reporting, what you have to do as a marketer is make sure that your reporting is not an artifact. It's sort of a decision tool, and always present it as such. So never hand someone a report, tell them to read it, and don't ask for it again, because that doesn't add value for anyone.
I love it. Reporting should not be an artifact. That's good stuff. You're giving me all kinds of good content for blog posts here, so I'm just writing that down. All right, so Erica, first off, I just want to thank you so much. This has been great. I really appreciate your time today and your willingness to share best practices. Just a reminder for our guests that we will send you a replay of today's discussion by email. You can also download it in the Resource Center at www.modernmarketingtoday.com. I also encourage you, if you do decide to visit Modern Marketing Today, to download a copy of my new book, which is called Welcome to Web to Sales. You can find a free download, again, as I indicated, at Modern Marketing Today. The book is loaded with best practices, lessons learned, as well as exclusive interviews with marketers about how they're delivering meaningful ROI for their companies through these types of programs. So again, Erica, thank you very much. I will wish everyone an enjoyable day, and we'll be talking to you real soon.
Thanks, Mark.